Hey, everybody. I hope you're doing as well as possible. So, there's a lot of conversation going on in this country, and there's a lot of change coming, change for the better. But as we all know, change is hard and it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of faith. And my faith is very important to me. So, that's why I wanted to have a conversation with Dr. Anita Phillips. She is a faith leader, she is a psychologist, and she hosts a podcast called In the Light. I find her just so illuminating. She's brilliant, she's empathetic, and most of all, she's inspiring. So here's my conversation with Dr. Anita Phillips. Hi, Dr. Anita.
Hello, how are you, Reese? How are you doing today?
I'm good. It's great that you've agreed to be here with me, and thank you so much for taking this time out of your day. There's so much going on in the world.
There is a lot going on, and we need to push from holding on for the ride to having conversations about what we're actually going through so that we can get the most out of it, bring the most good out of hard situations, and move forward in a way that will make us all stronger in the future.
Maybe you can tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So I'm a therapist, a trauma therapist specifically, which means that I help people who have been traumatized to recover from trauma. Trauma has become really important to me because over the years of working with clients, it became so clear that very often what people are struggling with is actually rooted in something that they've been through, maybe even a long time ago. And that if we can address the trauma from the past, it's like pulling everything else up from the root. We can deal with the problems of the present.
You've talked about a trauma informed approach to having conversations, and I think
Mhm.
that's a great way to begin.
I do believe that that's the best way for us to approach each other right now, particularly for us to approach the Black community, because we have experienced trauma over and over again. So sometimes when people hear me say that, they get all frustrated, like, are you just talking about slavery? I'm not just talking about slavery. They have continued through every generation. Just this week, we marked the anniversary of the 9 people who were killed in a Charleston church by a white supremacist. I still remember that event in a way that I feel that tightens my chest. That's a long history of trauma, from church burnings all down through the centuries. And now someone walked into a Black church, a white man sat with that Black church community for hours listening to that pastor teach the Bible, and then still killed people. When you see people who look like you, who are from your community, being traumatized, not only in your everyday life, but then also on television and in videos, that is traumatizing. So I do want people to think about what it means for a community to be traumatized, because I believe as a human beings, we understand trauma.
I have a lot of white friends say to me, I don't know how to show up and even have begin the conversation.
One of the things that very often I hear white Americans talk about is not understanding this concept of privilege, and that it leaves them saying or doing something and they're just like, what? I don't understand. The frustration often comes from the fact that there's a blind spot. I was exposed to an area of privilege in my life. There was a young woman in my life who I had mentored for years who is heavy. She's obese and she had lost a substantial amount of weight. And we were all like, good for you. And we're encouraging her. And one of the milestones that she told me she was excited about was that she was going to an amusement park and that she'd be able to ride a roller coaster. I never considered that she had grown up with this limiting experience, that going to amusement park with friends, that she had to always be the kid who held everybody else's stuff. And so she talked about flying as being a trauma because airline seats are not made for people who are heavier. It just absolutely blew my mind, but I never thought about it because I didn't have to. What I have is a blind spot because
Yeah.
I've never had to endure that kind of humiliation.
I love what this quote that your husband put on his Instagram.
Hurt must be heard before it can be healed.
I love that.
Indeed. So many times when we realize that someone else is suffering in a way that we're not, we want to cut ourselves off from their suffering by not
Mm.
hearing them out and then making a judgment on what we think we would do if it was us. I don't know what I would do. It wasn't me. And even became more careful about how I congratulated her. Oh, wow, look at you. You've lost all this weight. Oh, you look beautiful. Now, that might feel like a microaggression to her. When we use that term microaggression, it's literally micro, right? Meaning microscopic. It may be so small that you don't see it, but the person on the receiving end feels it.
I was reading an article with an artist that I really admired. She was
Mm,
a Black portrait artist, and she had done this gorgeous, amazing piece of work that I was so in admiration of. And I scrolled down to
mhm,
read her commentary about her work. She said, I loved pop culture and I love movies, but I grew up thinking Reese Witherspoon was the only
mm,
way to be in a romantic comedy or in a funny movie.
mm.
That for me was like a gut punch that
Yeah.
I had, first of all, it was a reckoning for me that I had a great amount of responsibility to change
Mm,
the business I was in, to diversify the people who tell stories. If that woman hadn't said that, her voice and her lived experience as a Black woman, I would have never known how much effect I had on people in a good,
sure.
positive way, which
Yeah.
motivated me to do more and do better. I have benefited from systems that
Mhm.
rewarded people who look like me,
Right. Let
or
me
I
give you an
benefited
example of
from,
that.
yes,
I have a great
please.
example of that. So, going to a race space, my I mentioned my daughter today, who's 18. When she was born, as a girl, I was very aware of how the world responds to women based on how they look. And so I went to great lengths to surround her with beauty that looked like she did. I went out of my way to find a Black woman pediatric dentist. And let me tell you, that took some work. So that all around her, she would
Yeah.
see professional Black women, beautiful Black women to reassure her. And when she was about 6 years old, she was in kindergarten. We were driving down the street, and from the back seat, I hear, "Hey, mom." And I said, "Yeah, babe." She said, "Are white girls prettier?" Okay, so I'm still like, I'm literally choking up, and that was such a long time ago. And I was just like, oh, I've gone to all these lengths to surround her with reflections. She said, well, they're always on the billboards and all the magazines at the store, and they're all white and they're all blonde. And so those must be the pretty ones.
Mm.
They didn't look like her, they looked like
Mm.
you.
Yeah.
They look like you. And
Yeah.
you might not be you if you didn't look like you. So while moms everywhere are trying to teach their daughters to be beautiful, this is a layer that for the first time in my moments as her mother, the world's influence is stronger than me. So when you hear us talking about Black girl magic, we are shoring up our daughter's confidence, our son's confidence in a world that doesn't reflect them. And I might not tell you about that personal moment at work when I say at the boardroom table, we need to diversify the images here. I might not tell you that painful story, but I still need you to trust me.
Right.
I've been Black a long time. And
I
so,
believe you. I know you know. And I know that you
yeah,
have heard so many people's stories. And I also know that you have
yeah.
this gift of educating and you know the steps forward. One thing I was thinking about this morning was my girlfriend has a tree in the front of her yard, and people
Hmm.
walk by and hang their wishes for the world on it. I wonder what your wish is.
I wish that people would decide to endure the tension between what I thought and what I found out.
Mm.
That's a tense space. And when our minds start to be challenged or stretched, it's uncomfortable. And we will try and find a reason to confirm what we used to think. In those moments when it feels like, this is just too much, that people would be willing to endure the tension between here and there. Most things are not complicated, just
Yeah.
hard. And some
Yeah.
of this stuff we're making it complicated, but it's not complicated. It's just hard. But we can do hard things together.
I think so. And it's a
Mhm.
marathon. You told me that on one of our first
Yes.
Zoom calls. This is a
It's a
marathon.
marathon. It's a relay
Exercise.
marathon.
It's a
And it's a
relay. That's right.
relay.
That's good too.
Yeah.
Give me the baton. I can run for a while. You sit down. You
Yes.
rest.
Yep. And then I'm back in because I had a chance to catch my breath. I had a situation just a few days ago in a workspace, in a professional space, where a member of that space said something that was very culturally insensitive. And I was definitely planning to pick it back up and continue it. And another person from the meeting reached out to me and said, I'm so sorry about that. I'm going to send this email first. It shouldn't always have to be you. It didn't even occur to me that someone else would step up, a non Black person in the space would step up. That meant the world to me. And I felt like that is a signal of the kind of progress that we want to make. A couple years ago, maybe she would not have even recognized what happened.
First of all, great for your friend, but also it's the right thing to do.
If you want us to live in community, Dr. King's last question in the last book he wrote, where do we go from here? Chaos or community? Things are feeling really chaotic right now. If we want community to be strengthened in every way, we are going to have to listen to each other. We're going to have to recognize where we have a group of people, Black Americans have been wounded. It's not a debate. I'm not going to debate with a woman who's just been sexually assaulted. I'm not going to walk into a room full of women who come together as a support group who've all are sex assault survivors, and I am a rape survivor myself. So we listen to people who have had an experience with that's different than ours from humility, with some humility, excuse me. And that's so important in order to take responsibility. Then the next question is, what can I do to increase your safety? And when people haven't felt safe for a long time, it might take a second. All of this time that you have maybe not known that you were saying the wrong thing, the Black woman listening knew. Sometimes when we finally say something, it's going to come out a little bit like, okay, because it may be a blow up where I have swallowed this, and you may catch us on the day that it comes out a little rough. But I think if people begin to find other things in their life, like we talked about today with the attractiveness or the weight, that you do actually know how to do this.
Look, we can all do hard things. We're moms. Everybody's walking through the world with a different set of experiences, but everybody knows what pain is. I think this conversation is really great because I think it's going to encourage more people to step up. I want to thank you for your time today. The fact that you're willing to help use your gifts to help people right now is such a blessing.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate what you're doing. You're investing your influence.
Thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. I learned so much. This is an important time that we all need to talk more. Hi, y'all. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you want to see more content like this, subscribe here, or here, or here, like somewhere in this area. Anywhere over there.